start pulling apart. Welcome to our first ever Data Friday. This is our chance to, and for everyone's chance to dig into Neon and the data that we're producing. It's our intention to produce, to broadcast this every last Friday of every month, so that you'll get a chance to kind of take a look inside of Neon, see what kind of data we're producing, what we think the value of it is to the industry, and how Neons are using it to improve their business. And so just as a little housekeeping, there's a comment section on the right as you tune in. You can post questions in there. Our team's monitoring the other side, and they'll pull out the ones that we can work with and we can follow up with. So feel free to comment on that side. And then also towards the end of the meeting, there'll be a link, a calendar link. So if you want to book a time to continue the conversation, if you want to see a little bit more about what we're doing, I'd be happy to personally hop on with you and jump into it. So today we are talking about what I think is the most valuable metric in the industry going forward, the insurance transaction, because it's the thing that only agents own and control. And why is that so valuable? And frankly, why has that not been understood for now? So in the next half hour, I just kind of want to walk through that and give you a view into kind of what's going on in my head, what's going on in our product, and how you can be thinking about your agency and some of the metrics that we're developing as you think about improving on that. So first off, what is the insurance transaction? Well, I just want to give you a little visual of that. So let me just do a little share screen here and kind of walk you through what that is and why it matters so much. So here you can see kind of an overview of what I consider to be the probably most important thing in the industry. This is the insurance transaction. And why does it stand out as something so different and so unique? Well, it's because we're the only people as agents that have access to it and therefore can monetize it and create value out of it. So what we did is standardize the 22 things that an insurance CSR does and the 5 things that an insurance producer does. And you can see that the conversion of that brings in a lot of data and information that nobody else has. So for instance, when a customer calls, we can collect all the phone, the email, the text, any web or marketing information that comes in. We're capturing that as part of that transaction, that request, if you will. We can see the employee, so we can see who's working, what they're working on, who they're talking to, how carriers are being productive inside of it. We can also see the vendor partners, so we can see things like the carrier. We can see what InsurTech are being used inside of it. We can also see what third-party services or data streams are powering it. And then, of course, we're pulling information from the partner AMS. And that has so much importance to us because now we can start to see the policy holder, the named insured, expiration date, all the accounting functionality around it. And so if you think about it, each one of those boxes is pretty valuable, but never should they ever touch in this industry. And yet, every time a customer calls an agent or a prospect talks to a salesperson, this is information that can be collected, and it does amazing things to inform an agent. And so what kind of things can you learn when you bring all of that stuff inside of a transaction? Well, check this out. Let me share with you kind of just a slide that might help you think about the value of all those things inside one transaction. So take a look at this. This is right out of Neon Analytics, which we'll be talking a little bit more about here as we dig into it. But here you can start to see things like how much is a transaction costing me? So you'll see, and we'll talk about that, the average insurance transaction inside of Neon users right now is $26.84. Think about that. Every time something happens inside of an agency, it's costing agents $26.84 on average. But as you can see, that's average. There's a lot of processes that are significantly more expensive. Over on the second, you can see what type of activities they are. So now Neon is starting to bucket not only the cost, but we're associating that cost with a specific request type. I mentioned that agents do a repetitive things. We've built all of those into workflows and automation so we can begin to capture not only what they are, but how much they cost. And then, of course, you can see the cost per transaction individually, and then you can see the variables by each employee. And yeah, it makes a difference. And so if you think about it, inside the same agency on the same request in one cubicle, it can cost 30, 40, 50% more than the other. And so when we think about if we think about our agencies as just personal lines or commercial lines, or if we think of teams, so much about the architecture of who's doing what, whether it be internal or should we think external on it, makes a difference in the net margin to an agency. And so just a really quick example of why this stuff matters so much. And I would remind you that it's the only part of the insurance ecosystem that nobody else can see or wants. Carriers don't want to talk to customers. Insurtechs can't interchange with a lot of insurtech with a lot of AMSs or customers or carriers. And so this unique intersection is a hub and a resource that if agents are thinking smart, they can really start to turn into something special. It makes incredible data that only agents have and own, and it drives net cash or EBITDA to your business. So when you're thinking about what's being done, who's doing it, and how much it costs, you can really start to influence the financial fortunes of an agency. And not just EBITDA, but the value of the agency is actually in the transaction. And I'll be able to demonstrate a little bit to you as we go throughout the call. So today, I wanted to demonstrate that kind of cost per transaction data that we're developing here and distributing inside of Neon, and how Neons are starting to look at that and use that to kind of reconfigure their agency to think about strategic partnerships, and then also to identify value that they can create, not just in cash for their business, but then also in value to the business. So let's jump into Neon Analytics and take a look exactly what Neon see when they log in. And I volunteered to use my own agency here as a resource. So here's just one of hundreds of dashboards inside Neon Analytics that users and subscribers have access to. And you can see the cost per transaction, and you can see my agency's Inc. here, and then you can see the average Neon. Really interesting to think that inside that here's the things that our CSRs are doing, and here's the variable costs that are happening across it. And you can see that if you're really thinking smart about it, there's a real opportunity to save or make money inside of our operations if we're thinking the right way. See, we estimate that most agents come to us at around $50 to $60 per transaction. Now, there's no way they can know that because you're not tracking that. Most processes are just on notebooks or taught to us by the person sitting in the desk before us, or maybe in some policy or procedures manual that has access to it. Very little of what people do inside of agencies are tightly monitored or regulated. And as a result, it's very hard to know what the costs are. But we estimate that the average agency is somewhere around $55 to $60 a transaction when they meet us. And you can see that very quickly over the course of the first year, we can get them to an average price of $26.83, which means that we slash in half in the first 12 months the cost per transaction, which means the technology change and all the things associated with it are virtually free. It's paid for by the savings that come from running better and smarter inside of an agency. You can see across the bottom, there's the things that we do, right? And now you can start to see that as you look at those things, they tend to be one of two things. Well, they tend to be both things, which is high volume and low or no margin. And so these are the things that we can start to use the data to attack and improve. So let's just compare Zinc agency with the average Neon agency across the board. If you look at that, Zinc is running, well, $7.80 cheaper per transaction than the average Neon right now. And we're testing a lot of future releases inside of it. Now, you say, well, Seth, that's $7.80. That's not that much money. And I get it. As agents, we're not taught to, usually things come so well to us in terms of commission or in profit sharing that we don't think about those individual costs. $7.80 is not that much. However, Zinc will do 28,000 service requests this year alone. Customers reaching out to us and letting customers reaching out to agents and letting us know that, hey, we need something done. Every time we do it, we're running about $7.80 cheaper than the average bear. Times 28,000 transactions means that Zinc is developing $218,000 of net cash that the average agency isn't capturing. It's being lost inside of their operations. That's crazy, isn't it? And if you think about that, that $218,000 of net cash allows agents to think differently, to invest in different stuff, to compensate and hire differently, and to really grow or acquire competitors. And so that's a very valuable part of the transaction that, or the ecosystem that helps us to do that. There's a question from the audience here. What is the underlying technologies producing these views? It's Neon. So, and I'll get a little bit to that, Chris, so that you can see that. I'll give you an ecosystem view that shows you how we capture that, but it's the well-architected and engineered combination of a CRM Neon attached with your AMS and workflows and automations that have been built by fellow agents so that they can improve not only their operations, but uniquely inside of Neon, we actually share the data with everyone. Chris, I can't see your data, you can't see mine, but together we can pull it, anonymize it, and use it as a resource to benchmark. And so here you can see every CSR and every producer working inside of Neon, participating to a cost per transaction, and then my agency benchmarking against it, which makes it a valuable community asset. So just think about that for a minute. 218,000 of net cash. That's crazy. That's an advantage or a competitive advantage inside of the marketplace, truly data into money. But now think for a moment what that does for agency value. I think it's fair to say that an agency the size of Zinc, growing as it is, could get a 10 multiple. So that $218,000 of net cash times 10 equates to about $2.1 million of extra agency value. I mean, just stop to think about that. If you never sold another policy in the next year, but you reduced your cost per transaction by $7.80, you have increased the value of your business for sale or perpetuation purposes going forward. Or think about borrowing. If you want a line of credit so that you can go out and acquire as part of your growth strategy, all of a sudden now this increased value becomes an asset that you can leverage to improve or grow your agency. And so when we think about the cost per transaction, I tend to talk in the marketplace about data into money. And truly, this is a moment where the Neon data the analytics is showing us as users that how we look at our operation allows us to act and improve in a way that most competitors can't even get to. Truly something unique inside of what we're doing. So why is the transaction really then so valuable as we think about that? Well, now you can see what everything is happening inside of your agency and what it's costing you in terms of cash. You can then easily identify which processes are happening the most, which are the lowest margins, and then using the Neon CRM, you can automate those processes. So now you can, where we used to have people punching away and doing these processes, now that we've identified them and put them in a transaction, we can very easily inside of our agencies, or Atomic can do it for you, we can automate those. So now they go without anybody doing it. Customer notification, follow-up, next steps in process. All of those things that take up valuable agency times allows us to go faster on that. Two, now you can perfectly see inside of your agency exactly where to invest. So instead of attending the next conference and just saying like, oh, that sounds pretty cool, that's a shiny object, I want that. Now you can walk into that vendor ballroom and say like, you know what, these are the two things that I'm trying to solve inside of my agency because they happen a lot and they're expensive. Which vendor partner can I talk to help me focus on that? Really cash return on investment because of data. And then the next thing you should be thinking about is with those automations and with integrated technology that's helping you solve real problems and cost, you will have less people. And the average agency either grows out of their next hires or reduces headcount by 20% in the first year. As you begin to automate repetitive processes, as you begin to rely on technology that can communicate back and forth with the customer, you quite frankly just don't need as many people to do what you're doing, which means nobody needs to get fired here. It means you can grow without having to make that next hire. Or if the data identifies a non-performer, well, now they don't have you over a barrel. You can simply take those steps and begin to think about life without them and moving on. And so the future of an independent agency has to be less people doing more. And that's really a result of the ecosystem we're in. Just pause for a moment and think about that. If for any moment a customer just doesn't like what we're doing or wants a lower price, they simply have to go shopping. And there is an agent or a competitor out there who will offer them a lower price. They get to leave. Think about carriers too. If they're in a competitive situation, they just go to the rate filings and they increase rate. I'm not pretending it's that easy to make money, but they have a way that they can get out of those things. And who's left in the middle handling all the desires and complexity of a customer and all the inefficiencies of a carrier system or way of doing business? It's the agent in the middle. And what is the agent doing all day? Managing transactions, sales transactions and service transactions. And yet your average agency has no idea how many times it's happening, what their costs are, and how they can affect change on it. That's exactly what Be Atomic was built to solve, and that's what the Neon platform is solving. Two, when you create that transaction, both in terms of type, amount, and cost, you can now really aggressively look at third-party services to solve it. And Neon is open. So we're built on Salesforce, we're a CRM, and we can connect those transactions to anything out there in the ecosystem. So now you can look at that and say, hey, here's a third-party service that can handle this high volume, high cost, low margin transaction cheaper or better than us. It could be a virtual assistant. It could be an API with a carrier or a vendor partner. It could be a specific technology that can now take what's costing us tens of thousands of dollars a year and render it null when it comes to pricing on that. That's the value of thinking transactionally inside of our agency. So how do we know all this stuff? Why hasn't this existed before? And why is Seth the person bringing it to us? Well, I'm an independent agent. And I got sick and tired of my stuff not talking and not being able to understand. And whenever I went and talked to my people, it was always the same thing. They're like, Seth, the way we improve Zinc is to hire more people. And you probably all have heard a version of we just need one more person to get over the hump. In fact, it's the opposite. As less and less people get into insurance, as it becomes more competitive for top talent, agents should be expecting that there will be a smaller and smaller marketplace for more and more expensive people that can do high quality, high value things for clients. Meaning low margin, high volume stuff that nobody wants to do has to be automated. And we're in the business of doing that. So we've had a chance now over the last 22 months to watch 6 million transactions be created by agents, some around sales, a lot around service, and a bunch around tasks and follow-up, which literally, don't get me started. That'll be a future Data Friday. Tasks and follow-ups, because we don't have connectivity, because we don't have systems and process, cost agents millions of dollars in inefficiency. And we have to answer to what the carrier does when it comes to tasks or customers, and we pay for all the cost of that. But looking at those 6 million transactions over the last 22 months allows us to be able to build an ecosystem and solutions around it. So Chris asked exactly how we do this. Well, let me just share a little bit of a view of kind of what that looks like and how we look at what agents should be thinking about when it comes to these things. So let me scroll down here for a second. And get you right here. This is the insurance ecosystem as I see it. Here you can see Neon, a CRM that allows you to standardize and customize the workflows around sales and service. And as I mentioned, CSRs only do 22 things. Salespeople only do 5 things. We come out of the box with the understanding and data to improve those things. 2, you can customize them. No agent, as an independent agent, I guess I should say, is the same. We come from different geographies. We have different ways of doing stuff. We serve different communities or products or expertise. And so while we come out of the box with data-driven workflows and automations, anybody can customize or tweak anything inside of Neon to do that. But when you work inside of those transactions, we can bring all of those, all the things that supply and power them to them. So Chris, we can bring the AMS to the people. We can bring the rater to the people. We can bring InsurTech and third parties to your people, having them in flow, not logging into portals and breaking. When they work inside of those transactions, as I just demonstrated, agents can anonymize and aggregate that data together. And now they can look at benchmarking. How do I compare? How many people should I have? What should they be doing? You can then begin to look at what's the cost per transaction. As we look at all that data, we come up with unique metrics that nobody else has, driven by agent experience to improve it. We're built on Salesforce, so we can introduce things really quickly at weapons grade standards that can improve the ecosystem inside of it. Now, for instance, ChatGPT, while many CRMs will be hoping to accomplish something with that in the next 10 or 15 years, we'll have that going at the end of the year, going into next year, so that we can lower the cost of transaction. And then finally, we can develop services based on the data that we know change the game financially for independent agents. And I'll talk just a little about those in our next broadcast, and I'll touch a little bit on these, but we can now take things like your leads and bring them to market and sell. We can take data like your contact data and turn it into a retention tool. And then there's these third-party services, these transactional services that we've created that allow you to look at your cost per transaction, put it with the right person inside the agency, And now with the push of a button, move it outside the agency to be serviced at a lower cost per transaction. Jim's reaching out as a CRM. Would this replace something like Agency Zoom or Rocket Referrals? Yeah, we would be a core CRM. So whatever CRM's in place, we'd look to change it out and connect into your AMS on that. Rocket Referrals has a number of services. Some are actually pretty complementary to what we do. And so I would not rule out somebody like Rocket Referrals as a continuing vendor. The good news is about it is you'd see the data on what it's doing, the impact it's having on retention, how it's affecting customer satisfaction, and you'd be able to make a qualified decision about that. But as we think about a CRM, we intend to be a CRM connected to every AMS in the industry. We'll have 4 by the end of this year and probably hopefully 6 or 7 by next year as we continue to add them. We're completely agnostic. We think that this kind of technology, making the data that it makes and empowering a community of agent users together as one larger and growing agency should connect into every AMS system. And we're on the path to do that. And so I want to be the CRM that makes this data and connects and creates an open environment for connectivity for all independent agents. So you've had a chance to look at that ecosystem slide of kind of how we accomplish what we do. Let's talk a little bit then about one of those services and how they could impact things like cost per transaction. So we talked about today that the transaction is something only we have. We've never thought about it as agents as a product, but when we do, we realize that we're sitting on gold and that data is money for our agencies. But now as a community of independent agents, Be Atomic is leveraging that data to create solutions to lower that down. And so let me bring up another slide that kind of illustrates exactly how we do that. So here you can see exactly how we're tackling that as an illustration. So on the left-hand side, imagine us being able to push a button and have a VA on a transactional level service at a cheaper rate than you can internally. Now, that doesn't say that every agency probably still doesn't in some way have a VA, but VAs aren't being used to capacity. And frankly, VAs are doing more and more with high value transactions for customers. These low margin, high volume ones are the ones that we want to solve for. So inside of my agency, some of these ad removes cost, 15, 20, 30 bucks to do. You can see now that on our transactional model that you can start to do those things for $6.50, literally having the cost of transactions with a push of a button. Or imagine a very time consuming process, as I showed you on that cost per transaction, those tall ones were remarkets and requotes and things like that, where our CSRs and producers have to pour into literally hours worth of work, third-party portals, AMSs, Accords, and all of these things while we struggle to get quote. Well, inside of Neon with those qualified transactions, you can push a button, all the information goes over, a VA quotes it or puts it back inside the transaction, and now your people can go sell it. Literally what was costing us inside of our agency $109 at Zinc, we can now do for 13 or 14 bucks. And multiply that times the hundreds of thousands of times a year that we quote stuff or requote stuff, that really adds up. An interesting fact about that, I just looked this morning inside the Neon Analytics and saw that 16% of work inside of Neon is remarket requote. And so much of what we do on an expense side and that drives the cost of agents is going back and requoting that. And yes, we have raters, but the information's disconnected. They don't happen inside of Flow. And so when we can connect all of these things together, we can truly start to see an advantage inside of Neon. And so let's just talk about what that looks like for independent agents. So here you can start to see, let me stop sharing here. I apologize. Here, let me show you exactly what that equates to and why when we look at this stuff, we may forget how expensive it is. So check this out. Look at what these processes cost agents inside of Neon over the last 12 months. Here's your cost per transaction data inside of the standardized transactions inside of Neon. And you can see that inside of quoting and renewal, agents have spent $1.8 million worth of payroll quoting renewals. Look at this. Number two, almost $700,000 on ad removes. And so with this aggregate view of these small unit transactions that nobody's paying attention to, we're developing solutions around data to half and sometimes even more the cost of a transaction that an agency is working in. And so while InsurTech and a lot of solutions is just coming and talking to us about what they built, Neon is different. We're tearing apart the transactions of every user in the system every minute of every day. We're looking at the pain points, and then we're developing specific solutions around cost and around services, to change the game financially for independent agents. So let's go back to that. Let's go back to that view that I was just showing and show you where we can get to on that. So let's look at yeah, here we go. We're back at this. Here we can see now we're taking these ad removes that agents, the number 2 pain point, and we're dropping it down to $6.50. You can also see that we're doing quotes without raters for $19 and with raters for $13. So literally, if it's your biggest client and it's your best friend from college and you want to quote it, do it. Don't send it to a transactional VA. Not the way to go. However, if it's just a regular customer that just needs a remarket, instead of spending $108 of agency time, let us be able to hit that button. Let us be able to pull that stuff over and get it back to you so that you can just go sell the thing. That's using third-party services. Now imagine the day, and for us, it's coming very quickly this year, where now we can take it to an API. So those same transactions now to a carrier or to an InsurTech for $1 or so. And then we can introduce other connected because Neon is completely open. Everything's available on the Salesforce Exchange, and we have open APIs, so we can get it in. But imagine now being able to do cross-sell for $1 API hit or supplemental data feeds. Imagine that your producer is spending a lot of time putting vehicle information in. For $1, you can save that. Premium financing, $0, because those guys have APIs and they want to deliver them in flow. Or things like commercial binder quote or things like that. All of those resources are what a good ecosystem has to look at. But instead of just buying it, instead of just somebody selling it to us, frankly, these things should be based on the data that's inside of our agency, and no two independent agents are the same. So for instance, I just got off one of the best calls with one of our Neon agents in Wisconsin. Literally their average cost per transaction is $43. Think about that for a moment. People say, Seth, why are you sharing this? You're giving away all the secret sauce. I'm not. I'm showing you that there's an issue with this stuff and that you can't get to it, and that it's specific to your agency based on how many people you have, what part of the country in, what line of businesses you write, how much you pay, do you have benefits or not? All of these things go into our cost per transaction. And so that's why each independent agent cannot rely on presentations from industry experts or associations on what their costs are, because each of us as independent agents have made different decisions. And so only by adopting and using technology built for this stuff and integrating it in a really smart way, and then sharing your data with fellow agents, can you start to achieve not only your own information, but be able to influence and benchmark other agents so that we can improve together on that. And that's really, I guess, where I would say the mission of Be Atomic has remained completely unchanged. Our goal is to make sure independent agents have the same advantage that direct agents have, or frankly, that even some direct carriers have, which is on-demand services, allowing us to shine in the areas we deserve to shine, which is on our expertise. Nobody on this call should make their money doing certificates, by doing high volume, low margin processes. Independent agents and their highly valued assets, people assets, should be talking to people, giving advice, offering renewals, handling claims. Everything else should start to go down the automation train, so that we can be better for our customers and more profitable for ourselves, and then ultimately create more values with the businesses that we've invested in. So next month, with just a minute left, I would tell you that there's a calendar link in the chat. So if you want to continue this conversation, if you want to get a chance to see exactly how this might look inside of your agency, book a time. You will get me directly and we'll hop on and talk about it. Next month, if you'd like to tune in, we're going to talk about how Neon can help any agent turn data into money. So imagine you're not on Neon, but you still have data that you want to turn into value. I can show you how to do that, and we're going to talk about it next month. And then I'm also going to show you how Neon users are lowering their costs of transaction by up to 60 or 70% in some cases by using that data to create third-party solutions that allow them to scale much faster on that. So if you have interest, last Friday of every month, 12 to 12:30. Grab a ham sandwich or a breakfast bagel if you're on the West Coast, and tune in to check it out. I appreciate the time. Thank you for setting time in your busy schedule. Look for us on social. We're going to cut this thing up and put it out there. Please promote. And again, if you have any questions, reach out to me directly, and I would be happy to talk to you. Otherwise, I promised you 30 minutes of fire. Hopefully you got it. Enjoy the rest of the day. Appreciate you.